When the promise ends at 18. The unfolding story of Iowa's immigrant, mixed status, and increasingly diverse children. From the first day a child enters an American classroom, we give them a promise. Work hard. Try your best. Believe in yourself. You can become anything you put your mind to. We hang those words on classroom walls. Teachers repeat them when the work is difficult. Coaches say them after a loss. Parents whisper them over homework at the kitchen table.
So the child believes us. She learns English while helping her parents understand school forms, medical instructions, work schedules, and bills. She may change schools when agricultural, manufacturing, or seasonal employment requires her family to move. She may miss class to care for a younger sibling or help an exhausted parent. Still, she catches up. She joins activities. She studies late. She earns her diploma. She begins to imagine herself as a nurse, teacher, mechanic, business owner, lawyer, artist, farmer, or engineer.
These children are already part of Iowa. This is not a distant or hypothetical issue. During the 2025-26 school year, Iowa's public schools served approximately 496,617 students from preschool through grade 12. Of those students, approximately 346,681 were reported as white. Approximately 149,936 to 30.2% were reported in racial or ethnic categories other than white alone. Approximately 68,513 students were Hispanic or Latino. Approximately 8,935 met the federal education definition of an immigrant student. Iowa's public K-12 enrollment totaled approximately 467,935 students. In other words, nearly 1 out of every 3 children in Iowa's public schools is now from a racial or ethnic group other than white alone. The state's official immigrant count requires careful explanation. Under federal education law, an immigrant child or youth is generally a student between ages 3 and 21 who was born outside the United States and has attended schools in the United States for no more than 3 full academic years. Therefore, Iowa's count of 8,935 immigrant students does not include every foreign-born student. It does not include all children of immigrants. It does not identify undocumented students. It does not count every child living in a mixed-status household. It is only a narrow educational category.
The number of Iowa children whose lives are affected by immigration policy is almost certainly much larger. They include United States citizen children with 1 or more immigrant parents, children born abroad who have lived and attended school in Iowa for more than 3 years, children with permanent residency, refugee status, asylum cases, visas, temporary protected status, DACA, or other forms of protection, children whose parents or siblings have different citizenship or immigration statuses, children who speak English fluently but live with the daily possibility of family separation, multiracial and biracial children who may be citizens themselves, while fearing for a parent who is not.
Iowa projects approximately 467,641 public school students for 2026-27. If the proportion of newly arrived immigrant students remains near the 2025-26 rate of 1.9%, which we have been told is not the case, Iowa could again serve approximately 8,900 students who meet the federal immigrant student definition. That is a planning estimate, not an official count. The actual number could change quickly as families relocate, humanitarian conditions change, refugee arrivals increase or decrease, and federal immigration policies shift.
The story is especially visible in rural north-central Iowa. The changing face of Iowa is not limited to Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, or Sioux City. It is visible in rural school districts across Wright, Franklin, Hancock, Humboldt, and Hamilton counties. In the 7 north-central Iowa districts reviewed, Belmond, Clem, Clarion Goldfield Dowse, Eagle Grove, Hampton Dumont, Humboldt, West Hancock, and Webster City. Public schools served approximately 7,707 PK-12 students during 2025-26. Of those students, approximately 2,857, or 37.1%, were reported in racial or ethnic categories other than white alone. Approximately 2,521 were Hispanic or Latino. Approximately 1,285 K-12 students were English learners. Many students in these communities were born in the United States, have attended American schools for more than 3 years, or no longer qualify under the federal definition.
The English learner numbers give a broader picture of the responsibility rural schools are carrying. In 2025-26, Belmond Clem served 664 PK-12 students. Approximately 278, or 41.9%, were students of color or students identified in racial or ethnic categories other than white alone. The district served 127 English learners, representing approximately 20.6% of its K-12 enrollment. Clarion Goldfield Dows served 1,027 PK-12 students. Approximately 496, or 48.3%, were students of color. The district served 230 English learners, approximately 24.5% of its K-12 enrollment. Eagle Grove served 960 PK-12 students. Approximately 479, or 49.9%, were students of color. The district served 286 English learners, approximately 31.4% of its K-12 enrollment. Hampton-Dumont served 1,218 PK-12 students. Approximately 573, or 47.0%, were students of color. The district served 195 English learners, approximately 17% of its K-12 enrollment. Webster City served 1,790 PK-12 students. Approximately 642, or 35.9%, were students of color. The district served 333 English learners, approximately 19.9% of its K-12 enrollment. West Hancock served 643 PK-12 students. Approximately 163, or 25.3%, were students of color. The district served 50 English learners. Humboldt served 1,405 PK-12 students. Approximately 226, or 16.1%, were students of color. The district served 64 English learners.
In Belmont-Klim, Clarion Goldfield Dows, Eagle Grove, and Hampton-Dumont, approximately 4 to 5 out of every 10 students are now children of color. These are not isolated newcomers standing at the edges of Iowa communities. They are classmates, athletes, musicians, artists, employees, volunteers, neighbors, and future leaders. They are part of the present and future of rural Iowa. But what happens when the child turns 18? What happens when the student who was repeatedly told to work hard discovers that effort alone may not open the next door? What happens when the student who was encouraged to apply to college learns that immigration status may affect financial assistance, employment, transportation, professional licensing, internships, or the ability to use the degree they have worked so hard to earn? What happens when a young person graduates with a diploma in one hand and uncertainty in the other? Perhaps the country listed on the student's birth certificate once had temporary protected status, but that protection has been revoked, changed, challenged, or allowed to expire.
Perhaps the student has legal protection today, but does not know whether it will exist next year. Perhaps the student is undocumented. Perhaps the student is a United States citizen, but a parent, sibling, or caregiver is not. Perhaps the parents protected the child from the details for years because they wanted childhood to feel safe and normal. Then the child turns 18 and learns the truth. The promise that effort creates opportunity may not apply equally to everyone. The nurse who was told to heal others may be unable to obtain the authorization or license needed to work. The future teacher may complete college only to encounter employment restrictions. The aspiring entrepreneur may be unable to obtain financing, identification, insurance, or required documentation. The student who has lived in Iowa since childhood may be repeatedly told, "No, not you. Not under these rules. Not with this status."
A citizen child can still live in fear. Children within the same household may have entirely different legal statuses. One child may have been born outside the United States. Another may be protected under a temporary program. A younger brother or sister may be a birthright United States citizen. Legally, their situations are different. Emotionally, they belong to the same family. A citizen child may have every legal right to remain in this country and still lie awake wondering, will my mother be here when I get home from school? Dinus, a teenager, may be completing college applications while also memorizing emergency phone numbers. A younger child may carry a card explaining whom to call if a parent does not return. An older sibling may quietly begin preparing to raise younger brothers and sisters. A child with disabilities may depend on a parent who understands medications, therapies, routines, behaviors, sensory needs, communication systems, and medical history. The possible loss of that parent is not merely an immigration event. It is a child welfare, healthcare, disability support, and family stability emergency. These families are often called mixed status families. There is nothing simple about living inside one.
And then, the mother is left behind. A mother may wake before sunrise, prepare her children for school, work a full day, return home to cook, help with homework, translate documents, manage appointments, and reassure frightened children. all while carrying her own fear silently. How does she continue supporting the family if her spouse has been detained, deported, required to leave, or is afraid to report to work? How does she pay rent, utilities, childcare, food, transportation, legal fees, and medical expenses on one income? Who takes a child to the doctor if the mother is afraid that driving or appearing at a government office could expose the family? Who signs school forms? Who attends conferences? Who manages medications? Who provides transportation? Who comforts the child who wakes from nightmares? Who explains why dad disappeared? How does a mother promise that her children are safe when she cannot honestly promise that their family will remain together?
Who will care for the children? When parents fear detention or separation, another quiet crisis begins. Relatives, friends, teachers, neighbors, churches, and community organizations may suddenly be asked to care for children. Some families may be asked to take in one child. Others may be asked to keep several siblings together. A grandparent may be expected to assume care despite age, illness, limited income, language barriers, or lack of transportation. An adult sibling may suddenly become the head of a household. A trusted family friend may agree to help, but have no legal authority to obtain medical care, enroll the child in school, communicate with providers, or make emergency decisions.
Families may need immediate help with emergency caregiver designations, guardianship and custody questions, school pickup authorizations, medical consent, medications and health records, birth certificates and identification documents, housing and financial support, transportation, legal representation, keeping brothers and sisters together, supporting children with disabilities or complex medical needs. Yet many parents will not seek help until the crisis has already arrived. They fear being judged. They fear that requesting legal assistance will expose them. They fear signing the wrong document. They fear losing their parental rights. They fear that an informal caregiver arrangement could be misunderstood as abandonment. They fear that a child with brown skin, an accent, a Spanish surname, or a multiracial identity could be questioned or caught in an enforcement action despite being a United States citizen.
What does limbo look like to a child? Living in limbo does not always look dramatic from the outside. It may look like a student who suddenly stops completing assignments, a child who begins hoarding food, a teenager who gives up on college because the future feels impossible, a child who panics whenever a parent is late, a student who stops participating in extracurricular activities, a parent who misses a school conference, a family that stops answering the door, a child who is afraid to speak Spanish in public, a student who does not sleep because they are listening for cars outside the house,
a teenager who appears successful but is quietly preparing to become the caregiver and financial provider for younger siblings. Children may be physically present in classrooms while emotionally living in a permanent state of emergency. Fear affects concentration, attendance, behavior, mental health, physical health, and academic achievement. When one child lives in fear, that fear enters the classroom. When hundreds or thousands of families live in fear, it becomes a community-wide humanitarian concern.
The support cannot end at graduation. Iowa schools recognize that academic success often requires more than classroom instruction. Students may need transportation, interpretation, record transfers, family engagement, health services, assistance meeting basic needs, community referrals, and coordinated educational support. But those needs do not disappear when a student receives a diploma. A diploma is not enough if the path beyond it is blocked. A promise is not a promise if it expires at 18.
We must ask, who helps these students understand college admissions and financial aid limitations? Who connects them with legitimate immigration counsel rather than misinformation or exploitation? Who helps them identify scholarships, apprenticeships, careers, and professional pathways that remain open to them? Who helps a student determine whether a particular career requires citizenship, work authorization, a state license, or another credential? Who helps families prepare safe and lawful emergency plans? Who supports the mother suddenly raising children alone? Who checks on the child who has stopped attending school because the family is hiding in fear? Who ensures that children are not separated from siblings or placed with strangers simply because the adults around them did not know where to turn? Who will tell these young people that their lives are still worth planning?
This is more than an immigration issue. This is an education issue. It is a child welfare issue. It is a workforce issue. It is a rural economic development issue. It is a disability services issue. It is a mental health issue. It is a housing and food security issue. It is a public health issue. It is a community stability issue. And it is increasingly a humanitarian issue.
Iowa's public schools are educating nearly 150,000 children, identified in racial and ethnic categories other than white alone. Thousands are newly arrived immigrant students. Tens of thousands are English learners, and many more are United States citizen children living in immigrant or mixed status families. In several north-central Iowa districts, children of color now represent close to half of all students. These children are not a temporary population. They are not a problem to be managed. They are Iowa's future workforce, caregivers, entrepreneurs, teachers, tradespeople, health professionals, farmers, parents, and community leaders.
We must build bridges before the emergency. Our schools, legal service organizations, nonprofits, employers, health providers, faith communities, local governments, and neighbors must build bridges, not simply react after a family has been separated. Communities need trusted and qualified immigration legal referrals, confidential family preparedness assistance, emergency caregiver and guardianship planning, accurate multilingual information, school and community protocols protecting every child's access to education, college, apprenticeship, and career navigation, mental health and trauma-informed support, resources for single parents and suddenly divided households, assistance for caregivers taking in children, plans for children with disabilities or medical needs, training that distinguishes immigration status, citizenship, race, ethnicity, English learner status, and the federal immigrant student definition. Safe places where families can ask for help without being shamed or exploited.
Most of all, these families need us to see them. Not as percentages, not as case numbers, not as political talking points, not as someone else's responsibility. They are the child sitting in an Iowa classroom, the teenager working after school, the mother standing beside us at the grocery store, the student translating at a medical appointment, the young adult who wants to build a career, support a family, and contribute to the only community that feels like home.
We told these children that they could become anything. Now, we must decide whether we meant it. We must tell their stories carefully, protect their identities when necessary, and refuse to let fear silence entire families. When they cannot safely speak, we must help carry their voices. When systems become impossible to navigate, we must stand beside them. When children begin to believe they have no future, we must show them that their community has not abandoned them. Because these are not merely immigration stories.
They are Iowa's children. They are Iowa's families. And if a humanitarian crisis is unfolding in our classrooms, our homes, and our neighborhoods, history will not only ask what policies were adopted, it will ask who saw the children, who told their stories, who stood beside their families, and who chose to act.
When fear becomes an attendance record, Iowa's public schools are projected to enroll approximately 467,641 K-12 students during the 2026-27 school year. Although Iowa has not issued an official racial and ethnic projection, current enrollment patterns suggest that approximately 141,000 to 145,000 of those students, roughly 3 out of every 10, may be identified in racial or ethnic categories other than white alone. The percentage may be even higher in rural north-central Iowa communities, where Hispanic, multiracial, immigrant family, and English learner students already represent a significant share of local enrollment. These demographic changes are occurring as Iowa schools operate under stricter attendance requirements A student who misses more than 10% of the school days or hours in a grading period is considered chronically absent. At more than 15% non-exempt absence, the school must meet with the family and develop an absenteeism prevention plan. Continued non-exempt absence may eventually result in involvement from a truancy officer, county attorney, or court system.
Repeated tardiness may also become part of the calculation if a district records missed minutes or hours as partial day absences. For an immigrant or mixed status family, this creates serious questions. What happens when a child is late because an older sibling must first take younger children to school? What happens when a mother no longer has transportation because her spouse has been detained or deported? What happens when a family misses school for immigration court, a legal consultation, an emergency move, or because they are afraid to leave their home? What happens when the attendance notice is written only in English? What happens when the parent does not understand that 5 missed days in a grading period may already place the child over the chronic absence threshold? What happens when a frightened parent believes that responding to the school could expose the family? The school may see an absence code. The teacher may see an empty desk, but behind that empty desk may be a child caring for siblings, a family suddenly without income, a parent struggling to understand a legal notice, or a household living in fear of separation. Schools must not assume that silence means indifference. A parent who does not respond may not understand the letter. The telephone number may have changed after an emergency move. The parent may work during school hours. The family may need an interpreter. The child may have been asked to translate highly sensitive information that no child should be responsible for explaining.
Schools have a responsibility to communicate important information to parents in a language they can understand. Attendance warnings, engagement meetings, prevention plans, academic decisions, disability services, and disciplinary consequences must be explained through meaningful translated communication or qualified interpretation. A child should never become the family's primary interpreter during a truancy or attendance meeting. The goal must be to bring the child safely back into the classroom, not to push an already frightened family further into hiding.
Attendance intervention should begin with questions. Is the family safe? Has a caregiver disappeared or been detained? Does the family have transportation? Does the parent understand the notice? Is the child caring for siblings? Is housing unstable? Does the family need legal, mental health, food, disability, or emergency caregiver support?
Children need consistent school attendance, but attendance cannot be separated from the realities of their lives. When fear becomes tardiness, when family separation becomes absenteeism, and when a language barrier becomes failure to cooperate, schools and communities must look beyond the numbers. Otherwise, a humanitarian crisis may be recorded merely as an attendance problem.
These are not merely immigration statistics or attendance records. They are Iowa's children. They are Iowa's families. Their future is part of Iowa's future, and how we respond will reveal whether we truly meant the promises we made to them.